Hello and welcome. My name is Tyrone Davis, and I'm one of the Associate Artistic Directors here at Center Theater Group. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. As you know, today marks the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. George Floyd has had an impact around this country and around the world, and certainly on the American theater. Today is a day of reflection. Today is a day to honor the life and legacy of George Floyd. And I'm so honored to host this conversation, Journey Towards a New American Theater, George Floyd's Lasting Impact. And if you haven't had a chance to, please check out on our digital stage a beautiful piece, a poetic short written by John White, directed by Lakeisha May, called George Floyd, the Father of the Reimagined America. It's available on our website. Hope you have a chance to check it out. And so today's panel is, wow, I'm just so excited for it. It's a conversation that we have been having internally. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with all of you today. And so to moderate this conversation, we have the one and the only Carol McCord. And Carol is an arts leader, a veteran in our field, founder of Equity Quotient. And I can tell you we are in good hands. So please feel free to jump in on the chat, ask questions, talk to one another, talk to the panelists. I'll certainly be there as well. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Carol. Thank you so much, Carol, for being here.
Thank you so much. I am so honored that you reached out to ask me to moderate this panel. I'm so excited about it. And to be doing this panel with two amazing, incredible artists, John Lee White and Nicole Salter. Before I start and I bring John and Nicole out, a year ago today, a police officer pressed his knee to the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds and crushed the life out of him. And that event was catalytic, almost as the murder of Emmett Till was in the 1950s. Really just kicked the door open and allowed us, Americans, all of us and across the world, to really see for the first time the systemic and structural nature of these things of what we call racism. I'd like to hold a moment of silence. Just take a moment before we go into our discussion to just breathe and think and feel and honor the unwilling sacrifice that George Floyd has made that has resulted in a racial conciliation in our country. If you would please just take a brief moment. His name will be forever attached to this moment. I'd like to introduce Nicole Salter and John White. And thank you for joining me. This is going to be an amazing discussion about something that's really, really important. Nicole and John, I'm going to give you the same prompt. Your bios, anybody can read. We're not here to have you be a talking head to tell us all the amazing things that you've done and that you've created. We're here to learn, to hear a discussion, to hear your thoughts, to hear what moves you, what inspires you. So here are the prompts I'd like for you to introduce yourselves to our audience who is somewhere out there in the ether. I have no idea where. Your name, your preferred pronouns. When people refer to you in the third person, what are your preferred pronouns? Where are you in the world? Where are you at this moment on this Zoom? No, I'm sorry, stream, whatever this platform is. I'm so used to Zoom. But where are you in the world? And if you would, tell us something about what this moment means to you. As an individual, as an artist, what does this moment mean to you? And I'd like to start with Nicole.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to you, Carol. Thank you, Tyrone Davis. Thank you, Center Theater Group, for making this event a part of your programming as a theater. I know that you can curate whatever you like. The fact that you chose this speaks volumes about the institution you all represent. Thank you so much. My name is Nicole Salter. Also, Carol, you're a woman after my own heart because my name is spelled with 2 Ks, and you have a very unique spelling of your name, which shall not be forgotten.
Thank you.
My pronouns are she, her, and hers. For those people with access needs, I am a tall African-American woman with very long locks and a bright, beaming smile, sitting amidst a turquoise background and an emerald green shirt. With cowrie shell earrings that I love. And I am stream yarding in from the unceded lands of the Lenni Lenape and Munsee Lenape people, also known as New Jersey, colonially known. Now that I've done all that, I forgot your question, Carol. What does this moment mean for me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just even the moment of silence that you had and the recognition that we have gone a year with a life snuffed out is overwhelming and word defying. And while George Floyd's death has definitely been a catalyst as of late in our society and in our field, he has the ununique distinction of not being alone. There are many who have been murdered by the systems that allow them to be, who happen to be people who are Black and brown and indigenous, who often go unrecognized, their murders. And it is overwhelming and alarming and scary. And it is galvanizing and angering. And pain-filled.
All those, yeah.
As a person, that's what it is for me. As an artist, it is an affirmation that my contribution is not non-essential, that the reintroduction of humanity through the lens of the examination that the arts provide is what is needed. Because clearly we've lost sight of the values we purport. And we are an enclave of society that can help bring us back into integrity and back into truth and back into alignment with nature, not with dominance and scarcity, which are the underlying values driving all of our capitalist needs.
Yeah. Thank you. That was just brilliant. Yes to all of that. Yes to all of that. John, what about you? Your name, preferred pronouns, where you're calling in from, and what does this moment mean to you?
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Nicole, and thank you to Center Theater Group of LA for this opportunity. My name is John Lee Gaston White, and I say my full name because my grandmother told me years ago that your name is not John White, it is John Lee Gaston White, and don't you ever forget it. So today I honor her by saying my full name. My pronouns are him, his, and he, and I am calling in from or signing in from Tampa, Florida. What this moment means for me, personally and both as an artist, I'll start with personally. I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a citizen, and I'm a human, and I'm also Black. And all of those things connect me to this country, to my people, and to this moment. I also grew up in Houston, Texas. I grew up in Third Ward, Texas. I grew up in and around the CUNY homes where George Floyd lived. And I went to Jack Yates Senior High School, where my my mother and my aunts and my uncles also attended school. And so I'm very familiar with those stomping grounds, if you will. In fact, my middle school crush grew up in the CUNY homes, and I would walk her there when I could from school each day. And so this is a personal moment to know that a boy who grew up in Third Ward, who tried to leave Third Ward and make a better home and place for himself here in America, was killed by the state. That boy, that man, that father, that son, it could have been me. As an artist, artist is about feeling. It is about being one with yourself. And so as an artist, this is about me feeling in this moment both the pain and the joy of life, both the triumph and the failure of what it means to live in this, our American system. And then how do we say as artists, how do we reimagine this system? How do we transform this ecosystem? How do we regenerate ourselves to be better, more home, more human for each other?
Oof. Okay, I have to take a breath. I'm on this call with you from Atlanta, Georgia, the unceded territory of the Eastern Band of Cherokee, and the Muscogee Creek. I was born and raised in New York City. I'm a product of New York City schools, public schools. And this moment is really, really personal to me because of all of the murders and all of the deaths that have happened. This, to me, the way that George Floyd's life was crushed out of him was something I had never seen before. And I thought back to the moment when I was 8 and I saw the picture of Emmett Till in his casket, because Mamie Till did that most amazing catalytic thing to make the world look and see what happened. And I connect those dots. I carry all those stories. I carry all those histories. And what I know about this field that I love, that I have devoted my life to, that this is the moment where the American theater can actually become a true American theater. This is the moment, because we're finally seeing the outcomes and the results of policies and systems and practices that have led to a field that, quite frankly, never really made space for all of these other voices. Sound like there are new voices. There are no new people in the world. Can we agree? There are new people in the world. So these voices have always been here. They've just not had the space, the place, the agency, the resources, the power. And as a result of that, our theater field has not really been a place to respond to the moment, to the needs of the moment. And here we are. The role of culture in a society is to hold up a mirror to that society. It tells you who's valued, who's valid, whose stories count, whose stories are important. And now we're having to shift this culture to include all of these other voices. If we understand the role of culture, then it's easier for us to keep a clear path to see how the work that we do connects to these larger systems so that our society can see them. That's the role of culture. And it's been largely invisible. So I want you to think about that for a second. And then here's a question. What would a healthy theater ecology or ecosystem look like? What would a healthy, holistic theater ecology, a theater for the 21st century, what would it look like? Who's there? Who do we see?
I can answer that.
Go right ahead.
For me, You talk about culture being the element of society that offers a mirror, but I think we also often neglect to see how culture has the power to influence, the equal power to influence. So the American theater would be one that took as much responsibility for its power to reflect to the people as it did for its power to influence the people. And I also think that, our stories are pivotal to our experience of life. You actually can't experience life outside of the context of a narrative.
Yeah.
So the story on our stages would reflect our stewardship of the American narrative as being a place where everyone was not only invited, but required to make a contribution to this thing that defines who we are and how we see the world. I think that that's very much what it would look like. And finally, I think that the new narrative would reflect more of the truth of what it means to be alive. Right now, all of our systems are really based on the Western world's insistence on their perspective of dominance and scarcity, right? Because that's what they saw in nature. But we now have enough information scientifically, esoterically, philosophically, spiritually to know that nature is not hierarchical. It's cyclical, it's circular, it's not ranked, it's linked. But none of our systems reflect that, and none of our storytelling forms reflect that, our understanding therein. So this new narrative would have a form and content that reflected the truth, which is true and evident in our everyday existence, which is true in your body. Imagine if all of your organs decided they wanted to be the brain because the brain was the best. How long would it take for the body to die? Not very long.
That's right.
Our body thrives when each thing knows it's valued and does its job, expresses its diversity excellently. That's when we achieve what we call health and thriving. So there has to be an ecology that allows for the kind of diversity that doesn't insist that we're all trying to do one thing.
Yes.
That actually appreciates every contribution of every kind of thing as a part of what makes the healthy body thrive.
Yes.
So our field would be incredibly diverse and celebrated as such. And that would be a signal of health.
And the work that I do, the racial equity work that I do, I say to folks, diversity is, you can't do diversity any more than you can do breathing.
Right.
Diversity is.
It's homogeny. That's not a thing.
Exactly. John, turn it to you.
Yeah. Let me start with this, and I think I'm going to state the obvious, but America is broken. And if America is broken, the people are broken. And so we have to just start with the truth of what is.
Amen.
And so my whole concept is about how do we reimagine America by first reimagining our individual selves. Our art mirrors our country, our nation, and our nation mirrors our art. And so at the end of the day, the theater can only be what we are. And so to Nicole's point, we have to build more whole people, more human-centered people, more people that actually feel and can express that feeling. We have to dismantle both white supremacy and patriarchy in the same vein. I say that because George Floyd, Father, the Reimagined America, the poem that I wrote, is about the dismantling of both white supremacy and patriarchy. It is about a man calling out for the one thing that he can see, feel, and express, and that is his mother, the sacred, the feminine. And so art is about feeling. And men who do not feel cannot create art. They cannot create a space where art can truly be art, right? And so the human experience, the American experience, is only resembled in the art that we can exhibit. And my take on this is that we all have to be transformed. And so this moment is not only a moment to dismantle systems, it is a moment to re-engage in ourselves, to figure out who we are. And from that place, what then do we want to express to the world? And that becomes the mirror, that becomes the American theater, that becomes something that people want to see, want to feel. And in the words of the poem, that is when the word becomes flesh.
Y'all are killing me over here. Love it. Yes. I just, James and Grace Lee Boggs, back in the 1970s, my husband and I were part of their organization. And in their book, Conversations in Maine, they said that the struggle of the 21st century is the struggle to become more human beings. And that so deeply resonates with me because in my work, I go all the way back to the doctrine of discovery in the early 1400s, which said to Columbus and all the explorers, if you come to lands and there are no Christians there, consider the lands unoccupied, the lands are vacant, the people are not human. And you can take the land or everything in it or on it for the church and the Portuguese and Spanish crown. They are not human. And in that first papal bull, they put 2/3 of the human family out of the human family and took on the power of creation, which only the creator has.
Exactly.
Took on the power of creation and created new people. This is where Americans who became white and Americans who became black came from. We need to understand how all of these things are interconnected. But John, you were absolutely right when you're saying that there's a brokenness in our society. And it goes back to the institution and imposition of these policies and ideologies of oppression that we're all still living with. And in order for us to have a healthy combined future, we've got to acknowledge and know all of those things that were done so that we can rebuild. There's a reason that I said at the very beginning that this is a moment of racial conciliation rather than reconciliation. Because to reconcile means that we already had something that was broken, right? This is a moment of racial conciliation in our country. And it's absolutely essential. And it's all offering us a moment to explore all of the other ideologies that are a part of that: homophobia, transphobia, ableism, all of those things. That what is it that human beings need to thrive? What is it that we need? Because it doesn't matter where you live on the planet, we all have the same needs.
I think all of those things, Carol, for me, are born of the same viral mental disease, the viral mental misperception of hierarchy. Our view that the world is a place where you are ranked in value. You're not valuable because you're here. There's a ladder that we've created in our perception and thus in our systems that you can elevate and escalate or decline from, when that is a fallacy. We invented that. That doesn't exist. It's not in nature. Find it.
Right. That's right.
It's not a thing. But it's a thing that we hold up, so it becomes our experience because we keep insisting that it's the thing.
Right.
Between the value of that hierarchy and the perception of scarcity, we have created all of the isms.
Indeed.
Those are but symptoms of those causes. So how do we correct the perception? How do we correct the vision? How do we correct the value system that will outpour many things that are different than what we've created thus far?
There's an artist in Minneapolis, Curtis Kirby, and he said, America doesn't need to decolonize, we need to indigenize. Because the ways of people on this land, the stewards of this land for 10,000 years, they were not perfect, but they had so much to offer. So much knowledge about what it means to be human to offer. And I absolutely agree with him. We do need to indigenize.
They consider themselves a part of nature.
Exactly.
The Western world does not. It considers themselves the keepers, the dominators of nature.
Right.
We harness nature. We use nature. We subdue nature. We're not a part of it.
and we extract from it.
And we extract from it. It's here for us, but we're not a part of it. We don't see ourselves in it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You know, for me, Nicole and Carol, Cheryl, excuse me, it comes back to this. How do we return to our innocence?
Mm.
Right? How do we become childlike again?
Mm.
Children are innocent. They are worthy. They are rebellious. They have wonder. They have imagination. They go on journeys. They live in community. They have no problem playing alone, but also being together. They understand both the gratitude and the rage of life. They see, they know, they express, they are. And so much of the art and much of theater is about finding the innocence in what you are creating to express it. And so much of the discussions around how do we get back to the community that we aspire to be, right? The indigenous sort of lifestyle, right? It is returning to the innocence that we see in our children. I have 3 beautiful children. I look at them play every day. They revive me again. They also teach me what America could be. They also teach me, frankly, what the theater could be, what art can be, what I can be. So I think that's the essence of all of this. Nicole, you talked about nature. That doesn't get anything more natural than birth and children, right? And so I think if we look to them for being our answer, which they are, and we return back to them, the child in us mirroring the child in them, I think we're much better. The theater is much better. Democracy is much better. Our world is much better.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We're talking about values. Core values are vital in doing any kind of work that is restorative, that's about our humanity, restoring our common humanity, if you will. And America's core values are so that the conjoined twins of racism and hypercapitalism have prevented us from understanding what the core values are that we need to establish if we're all going to be humans on this land and this country together. I don't know if the American theater has really done the work in understanding and defining its own core values, because we right now, the way our theater has been constructed, it's a transactional relationship with audiences. People buy tickets, they come to the shows, they give some money, they attend an event, a gala. But theater has the absolute ability to be a place that is so central in the lives of human beings that it's deeper and richer and more connected to community, and being a space where people in the community can see themselves, express themselves, be themselves, tell their stories. We have to change the nature of American theater to make it something that isn't just about selling tickets. That's an easy way. That's an easy measure, but it doesn't tell us whether what we're buying tickets to is perpetuating the status quo, or is it really causing us to look at what's been given to us as the Holy Grail and look at it differently and go, oh no. I for instance, I say that the plantations, because I live here in the South, Lord knows, plantation heaven. But from the vantage point of the enslaved, the plantations were slave labor camps. Cannot be otherwise. Their labor made the life that the people in the big house live possible. So our value of people has been transactional, going almost all the way back to the beginning of the founding of the country. We don't value people.
No, we actually believe, we're from a culture of people with the perception that you can't acquire a good life without exploiting somebody. So someone also always has to be exploitable.
Yeah.
That's a part of how we're able to be something, because the ultimate goal is to get everything and give nothing. That, get more, pay less. There's all kinds of idioms we have for that. Like that's the ultimate goal of a life well lived in the Western world. So that defies nature. There's
Mm.
nothing that gets and doesn't give. There's nothing that's out of that kind of balance. There's nothing that just tangentially in perpetuity rises and never falls.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just again, our desire to defy nature fails. But the culture still pursues it and lauds it, not just pursues it. We look for examples of people who've defied and say, I want to be like that. I want to be like him. I want to be like her. They get everything and they do nothing.
Mm.
I want to be just like that.
Oh, Nicole, what just came up for me as I think it was in the 1980s when there was a place where people were saying that there are makers and takers, and that the makers were predominantly people who were white and the takers were predominantly people who were people of color.
Or in the hood, they'll say, you either get or get. Right?
That's true.
You
Yeah.
either get or get got. That's actually a worldview.
Yeah.
That's what this world is about.
That's right. And that's not creative. That's not imaginative. That's not generative or any, or I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think it's very creative. We literally made that up. It does not exist. That is not what the world is. It's very creative, but it's not true.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's at the beginning of this dialogue that we're having, this moment of conciliation, this reckoning that we're having. It's a moment of truth. It's a moment where we can close the chasm between what we say and what we do, between what we know and what we construct.
That's
like
right.
There's a chasm between these things that keeps us out of integrity. It's a moment where we can move ourselves into alignment with that which we know to be true.
Yeah, I think that the American theater is at an interesting place that it's always been in. And I say that because I am both a businessman and an artist, but I'm an artist first. And I often say that I champion the right to feel as an art form in all the things that I do. But as a businessman, I understand business and I understand capitalism. And frankly, I benefit from that. What the theater has to ask itself is, what does the ecosystem around the theater want to see and want to be? And to your point, what does it value? And so with that question, with that often that prompt, if the theater generates their resources from corporations as patrons, as wealthy donors, oftentimes they show us what those individuals want to see. And so what has to happen is that the community has to demand, the community has to say, this is what we want to see corporations. As you give your dollars to the theater, this is what we demand to see on the stage. This is what we want to see from the people and vice versa. So I'll give you an example. Lakeisha May, the director and the producer of the project, George Floyd, the Father of the Reimagined America, we filmed that project. She filmed that project in Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem. That doesn't get any more community and theater than that, right? Now, if you look at LA, how many things are taking place in the community in Compton, right? How many things are taking place in theaters in San Francisco and theaters in New Mexico or in Santa Fe and so forth? Are we going out to the people and are the people coming to us? Then we have to ask ourselves, who has the money to buy the ticket? Where are they getting that money from? What is their access? Who can even access this digital stage when we know that broadband is not widespread in rural areas or in any city communities where I grew up, quite frankly? So the theater has to reimagine itself just like this country has to reimagine itself. The people have to stand up and demand what they want from themselves first, from the corporations, from the government. The government also funds theaters, right? And so if the government isn't funding theaters in the way that is appropriate, the people have to demand that. But the people have to realize that they are art. And if they want to see a reflection of themselves in the theater, then they have to demand it in all of the systems and the structures that bring about their art. At the end of the day, again, art mirrors our nation, and our nation mirrors our art.
Yeah, I don't think that um, I'm I sit on the board of an organization, and when COVID hit, we spent a lot of time talking about how to mitigate the onslaught of losses we could see coming.
Mm.
One of the most interesting things that was said during that time of negotiation, um, after having been closed for a while, we someone was challenging theaters to ask who misses you.
Ooh, good. Ooh.
Who misses you? Are they the people next door to you, the people across the street from you, the community you purport to serve? Who 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 needs what you do?
Yes.
Who values what you do?
Mm,
And these people who are part of your mission statements, are they the ones clamoring for your reopening?
mm, mm.
And if the answer is no, you have a lot more work to do than figure out how to reopen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's that. I don't know who
Yes.
asked that question, but that is absolutely brilliant. Who misses you?
Yes.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Phew. Wow. No, I mean, you know, it's when you hear a truth that's so clear, that it's almost like a through line through your body that just hits you and goes, "Ah, that's the real truth right there."
Yes, it is.
Speaking of theater, what has been your experience with the We See You White American Theater? That love letter to American theater.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was badass. Can I say that? I'm sorry. I mean, what I enjoyed about it, many things, but what I enjoyed about it overall was the consideration of the entire ecology. We're not just talking about the non-for-profit theater world and producers. We're not just talking about the artists who populate those stages. We're not just talking about the commercial world. We're talking about students. We're talking about funders. We're talking about the whole ecology. That's the kind of I hate the word reform, I really do, but reform we're talking about cannot be done in silos.
That's right.
We have to consider the entire ecology. We have to consider the curriculums, we have to consider the critics, we have to consider everything that fuels and plays a part in what we do. And that document represented that ecology.
Mm.
So everybody here has something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody here has something to do. I appreciate that.
Yeah. John?
I mean, look, I think it goes back to the point we were making earlier that everyone has a part in what we often become. You know, we are both individuals, but we are also both a collective. And so the only thing that can give rise to something that is often strong is a whole person, a person that knows themselves, a person that sees themselves, but also on the other side of that, a person that is seen and known.
Mm.
And that is the theater. And so if the full community, if the full capacity, if the full ecosystem isn't bright and strong and vibrant and inclusive and equal, then it won't matter.
Mm.
And oftentimes that's what we've seen. You know, if I'm honest, I didn't come to a theater until I was in college.
Mm. Mm.
We never talked about the theater when I was in Third Ward going to school, right? I didn't go see plays. In fact, if you were in drama or doing some type of play or writing poetry or something like that, you know, that was not a good thing. I'll say what would have happened to you, right? Especially as a male, what would have happened to you. And so, to Nicole's point, art and drama and poetry and music is just as masculine as it is feminine, right? And so, the problem when art has been removed from school due to the lack of public expenditure, due to depressed property taxes, particularly in inner city neighborhoods that reflect people of color, right? Or people in low economic status, people's ability to showcase their art, right? To understand moments of expression is in peril. And so the American theater can only pull from that which it can pull from.
Yeah.
And so I think government has a hand in this. Obviously, the people have a hand in this. Corporations have a hand in this. The theater as an entity, as an ecosystem, as a hierarchy, they have a hand in it. You know, to Nicole's point, everybody must play a role in this. And we have to demand that things like art and music and these forms of engagement and of expression aren't just seen in one light, but they're seen in the fullness of the light that they should be illuminated in.
Yeah. One of our, I don't want to call them callers. I'm so old. We're not on the radio. One person watching this just said, you know, we have to have a massive national campaign for our arts to reiterate the point that they are not entertainment. They are entertaining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Two different things.
Thank you. And I just want to say that, you know, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of school districts around in places in the country where kids have all the arts that they want and then some. They have performing arts centers. I know I live here in Georgia. We used to live in Alpharetta, Georgia, about 20 minutes from where I live now. And I have to tell you that the high school campus that my grandchildren are going to looks like a college campus. And there's a performing arts center. There is a theater, there is a dance program, there is a theater music program. And these are largely predominantly white, wealthy communities because one, our public education is funded by property taxes. So the schools that are located in wealthy communities have everything, and those schools that are in economically fragile Black and Brown and Indigenous communities, they don't have them. So this is the arts are out of the schools. It's that the investment has not been made for all of the children.
Yes.
And the cost of entry is the point, is a part of it. I remember having a conversation with, I was doing some work with the League of American Orchestras with Jesse Rosen, who was the executive director. And he said, a great guy, and he's an ally. But Jesse's, you know, we were talking at the end of a league conference, and he said something to the effect that a world-class cello for a musician could cost as much as $150,000. And I just looked at him and said, but that's insane. Who can afford that? Yeah. Who can afford that?
Well, who can afford the American theater, Carol? Who can afford to be an intern for some of these institutions? Who can afford these tickets? I mean, what's interesting to me is that the wealthy classes, which are often conflated with whiteness in our nation, they've always understood the power of narrative. That's why they invest in it. They've always understood that art was narrative creating. That's why we have people like, I hate to get political, like Mitch McConnell, who are currently riling against the 1619 Project being taught as a part of American curriculum. He's like, what is this narrative? We tell the story that we want you to tell. And you're welcome to come onto our stages and tell our story, but not your story.
Yeah.
Your way, right? So we can have, you know, creative casting around these Shakespeare shows, and people about to go crazy in the chat. I hope they go crazy, but you can tell the story of Alexander Hamilton, and you can embody it as long as it's Hamilton's story. You know, you can't tell Marcus Garvey's story with your cultural form. With your cultural form, you can tell our stories, but you can't tell yours.
Yeah.
And because they know the power of narrative. We are taught that it's just entertainment, that we're just shucking and jiving, that these are not spiritual practices. They're spiritual practices that have healed us and kept us whole and kept us connected and kept us grounded and kept us relational. They're not entertainment. They weren't born that way. We sell them because that's all they would let us sell. Either that or our labor. But that's not what they are. When are we going to reclaim them as ours for their intended purposes, to reflect
That's right.
the values and the people that we are, but also to inspire and to influence who we are becoming. It's twofold. And we don't have spaces that do that for everybody.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, and I'll speak from a business perspective because I think that largely influences the American ecosystem, quite frankly. Talking about capitalism, right? You know, to express ourselves and for it to be seen and heard in a way that is meaningful, one has to own. One has to be in possession of the distribution, the ownership of the content, the supply of that art, and has to control it from the entire chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in this moment of reimagining,
Mm-hmm.
in this moment of awakening, we have to realize our power. And we do that in waves, right? So we vote enough to put in Senator Raphael Warnock and Senator, Joseph Ossoff from Georgia. We do it in waves to sort of remove President Trump from office and bring in President Joe Biden. But what do we then demand of the banking system, right?
Mm-hmm.
To own and control? What do we then demand of media to own and control, right? What do we then demand to own and control what takes place in our public education system or our private education system, right? What are we doing to get more share of the American system? What is the new reconstruction, right, that Douglass was fighting for, right? What is the new civil rights era that King was fighting for, but more on the, as people like to say, the not the civil rights, but the silver rights, right? How do we get back to ownership, telling our story, expressing our narrative, is both about ownership, but it's also about being unabashed about who we are becoming, who we want to become. And so we have to do both, I think. And I think it's all a part of the nature and a part of the ecosystem. I think that is happening, but it has to happen more and more and more.
Well, with respect to theater, I think that's interesting because theater, the not-for-profit theater world is a world of charity. We exist with schools and churches. So the way that you can access a school, you should be able to access a theater because they have the same IRS structure, right? But that's not true. You can access a theater the way that you can access a school or a church, and you should be able to. And I also think that when you think about the charity structure under which the non-for-profit theater world is comprised, they're made of boards. But when you look at most boards, they're not comprised of the people who they say they want to serve.
Right. Because they can't write the check. Right.
But what about the economic system that theaters are built on is top down and not bottom up?
Mm-hmm.
Why is one person, one entity, one corporation determining the lifeblood of the narrative of an entire community? Why is not the community
That's right.
supporting, right? So that whether or not this one corporation gives doesn't stop the service being rendered the way that it can right now.
Go ahead.
Why are the people on the boards, why despite the current structure, economic structure, cannot people from the community be invited to be a part of the ownership of the institution, which is essentially, or the stewardship, the governorship of the institution, which is what the board is? That can happen right now.
I agree.
Permission to do it. You don't need anybody's permission to do it.
No.
No agency, there's no authority that says, okay, now you can do that.
Yeah. Right.
The nonprofit arts field and the theater is roughly 50 years old. And in that amount of time, it looks exactly like every other sector, industry, or field in our country, be it banking, finance, healthcare, higher education. The higher up you go, the further up you go, the wider it gets. And the power rests at the top. And the way that the boards are structured, it's more as though they are corporate boards and they're the shareholders, and the community doesn't have a voice in that. Whereas a 501c3, it would seem that because tax dollars are, the tax breaks that you get don't then go into to support communities. If we treat our board as a corporate board, like they're the shareholders, then that's the reason that you don't have people from the community sitting on those boards.
All right.
That the nature of, as you're highlighting, having more people from the community, so that it's an emergent process, that the art comes from the people and is shared with people, and it goes back to them and their stories. So it's an opportunity now, as a part of this remaking of American theater, to change these relationships, to change these power dynamics, and to challenge them. We absolutely must challenge them.
Or to be in relationship instead of to be in transaction. I mean, I teach young people, and what I love about young people is that they know when you're lying. You're telling them these stories about what it means to be who we are, what it means to be American, what we value, what we support, and they go and they see different. And so they're not confused. They just think you're a liar. or at best, you're delusional. Because I'm out here and I see what is actually being valued, and I see what's actually being supported, and I see, and I just feel like we have to check our institutions to make sure that what our internal systems and our outcomes are reflected of what we say we actually value.
Thank you.
And the budget should tell the story. The committees on the board should tell the story. The way your staff interacts should tell the story. Whatever you curate and produce and should tell the story. The whole operation should tell the story of your values. And it is currently telling the story of your values.
Really?
No one is mistaken by that.
A budget is a moral document. It tells you what you value. It tells you your priorities. It tells you what's important. When I was reading grant applications, I would read the budget first before I read the narrative. Because if I read the narrative said that we value artists, and I looked at the budget line item for artists and it was 10 cents. Like, no, you don't value artists.
Nice.
Yeah.
But we've got 4 more minutes. And John, I want to ask a question of you before we get to the end of this.
Sure.
It's about the piece that you've created. What do you want people to take away from this experience when they watch that video?
So I want them to take away a few things. One is that this piece originated from a place of a relationship with my father and myself. The piece starts off with the words, "My father is alive but dead. He is a cat with many lives." And we have to understand that because of the way that America has been formed and the way that America has placed its necks on all of us, most especially in this respect, Black men. I'm speaking about George Floyd in connection to my father, but of course, this is widespread across all marginalized people and all people, quite frankly, especially women. My relationship with my father was such that he was alive, but in a way he was dead because he could not feel. He could not express, he could not fully communicate his love out to the world and his love towards me. There was a barrier there. And so this is about the pain of loving my father, but not truly knowing my father in the way that I want my children to know me. The other part of this is about George Floyd. And in 9 minutes and 29 seconds, he is killed, he is murdered. And in this process, as he is saying that he cannot breathe, the one thing that he says, the one thing that he remembers is mama. And to me, that centers us back where we should always be, which is on women, and which is on our mothers, and which is on the creation story, if you will. the crux of a man who I have coined the father of the reimagined America. In his last breath, in his last dying breath, he calls for his mother. And it is a painful reminder of the experience that most mothers have had to go through all throughout this world because of violence, because of hatred, because of an inability to see one another. So this piece is about a father and a son. It is about a father and his mother. It is about a mother who is up in heaven. George's mother is in heaven. And the piece says, as he ascends into heaven, I didn't want to hear you this way. I didn't want to see you this way. America took my baby away. This is the third thing. This is about home. Our first home is our mother. Our second home is what we emerge out to, what we come out to, which is the land of our birth, which is America. And what I often say in this piece is that our first home and our second home, the cherish and the nourishment that we get from our mother, we want to experience in America. And at some point, America must combine the two so that our home, which is our mother, and our home, which is America, resembles the innocence, the wonder, the imagination, the care, the nourishment that we experience in our mother's arms.
Wow. There ain't nothing else to say. I mean, whoo, John, thank you. We are at time. 8 o'clock on the dot. I hope that everybody who is watching this with us takes a little time and watch this piece that John has created. It's absolutely powerful, necessary, healing. Nicole, John, I'm just so blessed to have had this opportunity to be with you, even over this technological platform, and to be a part of this conversation with you. We could do this for hours.
We could,
but we can't because we do have a time certain. Thank you. And Tyrone and the Center Theater Group, to you and James, thank you for your backstage support, your technical support, your care and gentleness with us. And thank you all for joining us.